With this here, this ain't about being flashy. This is game day, son. It's only about one thing. Getting that W. That's the only thing that matters right now. Boy, you ready?
The past is the past, you know? It's a new day, bro. My day. Gotta do it now.
Blindside Fantasy Football Podcast back. Matt, we have a ton of stuff to go over today. I mean, it's just, we're going to go over our bold predictions from last week. Hopefully you remember all yours. I got mine right here. Recap all the Week 12 games. Preview not one, not two, but 3 Thursday night games. Go over some waiver wire pickups. And then, of course, play your all-in. So, jam-packed show tonight. You ready to get to this?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. So, Matt, I don't know if you got your predictions ready, your bold predictions from Friday's pod, but I'm going to go over mine here a couple. I said Zach Stacy would be the number one running back this week. I think he was well on his way before he got a concussion in this game.
Yeah, it was looking good.
Had a really good day. I think as a team, the Rams ran for 263 yards, I think it was. Just ridiculous. So Stacy could have had a much bigger day. Still had a really nice day for you guys. Not obviously the number one fantasy player, but still. Same thing with Rashad Jennings. I said over 18 fantasy points. I figured he'd probably have a touchdown or two. Didn't have any touchdowns, but still 122 total yards, so still got it done for you. Ray Rice, I said under 40 yards rushing. Booyah, got that one right. Ray Rice is a bum. He's just such a bum this year. Daniel Thomas outscoring Lamar Miller 2-1. That didn't happen. Speaking of bums, these guys are both bums. I'm going to call a mulligan on that one. Thomas getting hurt and both guys just terrible. VJax over 20 points. That was my final one. I was kind of right in the prediction. A Tampa Bay receiver did get over 20 fantasy points, just wasn't the right Tampa Bay wide receiver. So, didn't quite have it there. But, Matt, how did you do in your bold predictions?
I wish I forgot, but unfortunately I did, and I do have them as well. Not a very good week. I had Frank Gore going 150 and 2 touchdowns. I thought they'd feed the stud, try to get a win. I mean, they handled this game, so maybe you don't have to give the work to them, but that's something you always worry about when you have Gore. Eli, I said 375 and 3 touchdowns. What the hell's wrong with me? Why did I? This isn't 2008, 9,
It's like opposite day for you right now.
Yeah, terrible. Against that D, I liked it, but I should know better. Eli. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then Toby Gerhardt, I said 55 and a TD.
Yeah,
he had over 90 yards rushing, so I guess if you put him in your lineup off of that, you were happy with the day you had as a bye week fill-in type.
Yeah.
So,
but if you're starting Toby Gerhardt, you got bigger problems than listening to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless, LaShawn McCoy was on your team, something like that. Marshawn Lynch, so.
Yeah. All right, well, let's jump into recapping some of these other games here real quick. Steelers-Browns, Matt, you were with me when we heard Jason Campbell, out for this, out for the rest of this game, and you remember my immediate reaction. As a Josh Gordon owner, I was like, ugh, this is not good. Back to Brandon Weeden. But with Brandon Weeden, coming in 7 minutes and 43 seconds left in the third, targeted Gordon early and often. Gordon finishing with 14 for 237 and a touchdown. 7 of those receptions came from Weeden. 6 of them in the fourth quarter. He had 6 receptions, 138 yards, and a touchdown in the fourth quarter of this game from Brandon Weeden. I love Josh Gordon, but I am really worried about Brandon Weeden, and I'm not buying into this game at all. What about you?
Not buying into this game as far as Brandon Weeden.
Brandon Weeden, yeah.
Oh, no, but I mean, it just shows you don't have to worry about Josh Gordon at all. This was the ultimate garbage time, but no problem with that. He's still a stud regardless. 14 receptions, 17 targets, just unbelievable. Yeah. And obviously he knows what to do with it when he gets that football along a 47 he scored. The guy's a stud, no question about it. I think I actually put him in my top 5 this week. Weeden or Campbell, I don't care.
Yeah, I can't blame you. He's a stud. Jordan Cameron, 3 receptions on 10 targets. We mentioned last week how, since Brian Hoyer getting hurt, he's been the number 18 tight end. Very few tight ends get double-digit targets as consistently as Cameron. Would you rather have Cameron or Jason Witten rest of the season? Assuming Brandon Weeden's back at quarterback.
Yeah,
for good.
Cameron did perform a little better in the beginning of the year with Weeden. Obviously, his favorite guy, or my favorite guy for him this year was Hoyer, but Weeden had he had a first good few weeks with with Cameron. So I think I'm going to say Cameron still. I just like the upside, but I don't know. Witten is certainly more of a solid guy.
Safer. I think I'd go Witten because he's a little bit safer for me, a little bit better quarterback.
Yeah.
Cameron or Kobe Fleener?
Cameron.
Really? This one for me is a no-brainer, Fleener.
Yeah, I don't know. Cameron for me still.
What about Greg Olsen?
Cameron. I'm riding with him until the end.
You're gonna die with him, aren't you?
Yeah.
Guys will be holding hands together, just
hopefully
riding off in the sunset.
Yeah, hopefully it's a nice sunset and it's after the season and we've all won championships with it.
I don't know. Cameron keeps playing the way he's been playing. I don't see too many.
You gotta like 10. You gotta like 10 targets, though. That's definitely something that excites you if you're an owner of Cameron. Hopefully things are going to turn around with Whedon. If he continues as the guy for the rest of the year.
Steelers side, Antonio Brown, another nice day, 6 for 92 and a touchdown. And then Le'Veon Bell, I mean, I still hate him, but 23 for 80 rushing, 2 for 18 receiving. I guess I really don't have a reason for my Le'Veon Bell hate. It's there. It's not going away.
Another 3.5 yards a carry type game, but like I told you don't get points for that.
Yeah.
He gets to work in today's running back NFL with running backs today. Like I said, it's just give me a guy who's going to get 20 touches on a consistent basis.
Bucks and Lions, Matt. Nate Burleson comes back, and did you see a little deliver the pizza touchdown celebration he had?
No, I didn't even know. I didn't
delivered
see that.
the pizza.
And I watched a lot of this game too.
Touchdown celebration. He delivered the pizza. It was great. So in his return back, 7 for 77 and a touchdown on 10 targets. Burleson this year, I don't know if you know this, but in every game he's played with the Lions, 6 or more receptions. So, I mean, he's a guy that we'll talk about a little bit more when we get to our waiver wire pickups, but definitely a guy you should go out and get. Bobby Rainey, though, Matt, you're a Bobby Rainey owner. Comes back to earth here, 18 carries for 35 yards. You know, it's a tough matchup, but likewise, his great game against the Falcons, that was a really easy matchup. You know, next week he gets the vaunted Carolina Panthers run defense. You got him outside your top 20?
I do, yeah. I mean, and this was a matchup I wasn't expecting anything good against Detroit. They're a great run defense. He's not getting involved in the passing game. 2 receptions 2 weeks ago, none in this game. 1 target, so it's just, Carolina, another real tough matchup. You've got yourself a starter for the playoffs. It gets a little bit better, but not a running back 1, low end running back 2. I think.
Yeah, he'll be right on that cusp of 20 for me. Haven't done my rankings, but I will have him out later tonight.
Mike Glennon, another good game.
Yeah, he's solid.
Yeah.
Just 1 to 2 touchdowns every game. It's solid. Nothing spectacular, but solid. Vikings, Packers. Matt Flynn. I mean, you get a little scared when you say his name. You cringe just a little bit when you say him. But leads the Packers back to a tie in this one. And I got to ask you, I mean, you, with the quarterback situation the Vikings have had, would you rather have Christian Ponder right now or Matt Flynn if you were the Vikings?
I'd probably rather have Matt Flynn.
Yeah.
We've seen him produce in this system before. He's back home. He had that 6 touchdown game back in Green Bay that kind of made him his money, and he certainly made plenty of that bouncing around the league the last few years. But he'll fill in, I think, until Rodgers is back. He looked pretty good. 21 to 36 isn't outstanding, but coming out cold, I'm sure he wasn't expecting to play. I kind of liked what I saw from him, and no weapons were hurt by this. Lacey still had a big day. You like to see Jones with 12 targets, though. What do you think of him going forward?
Well, I was going to say, just going back real quick here to Matt Flynn, you said make a lot of money off of 1 big game. You think somewhere Jerome Harrison's sitting on his couch going, I had a big game once, where's my money? I
think Jerome Harrison has some actual bigger things going on than that, like cancer.
Well, I understand, but I'm just saying, I mean... He's another guy that had one of those big breakout games towards the end of the season.
Am I correct on that, right? Didn't he have an issue?
I believe so, yeah. But I'm just saying, I mean, it's...
Well, another case, Matt Flynn, look at Kevin Cobb. It was the same situation there in Philly, so...
what were you saying about James Jones? My opinion on James Jones?
Yeah, I mean, I just like to see 12 targets coming back to the mix here. Rodgers is going to be back, probably not this week, but the next week. What do you think of him, going forward with Rodgers back?
Yeah, I'm not excited about him. For me, the pecking order for me in Green Bay... right now is Jarrett Boykin, Jordy Nelson, and then James Jones. And I think when Rodgers comes back, it's going to be Jordy Nelson, Jarrett Boykin, James Jones. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we've seen it before. Rodgers can carry 3 relevant fantasy wide receivers, but I can't get excited about it. I mean,
yeah,
maybe wide receiver 3-4 territory, that type of thing, but not somebody I get excited about. Adrian Peterson in this game, kind of says, what groin injury? 32 carries, 146 yards, and a touchdown. You're not afraid of anything you're not afraid of any of these little injuries for Peterson. He's a beast. He showed you that coming back off that ACL surgery. You're not worried about any of these little injuries for him. Cordero Patterson, though, Matt, 8 for 54 on 11 targets. For me, he's kind of like Tavon Austin, where he has a huge big play potential, but just hasn't broken the big play yet. But for me, I'd much rather have him than Tavon Austin because he's getting more opportunities to make that big play. He's touching the ball more. Who would you rather have, both in redraft and dynasty, Tavon Austin or Cordero Patterson?
Easy. Patterson for me. He's a guy that can play every wide receiver position on the field. Not necessarily great right now. He's a rookie. He's learning still, but he's becoming more complete, and that's why we're seeing him more. I read a great little article talking to Frazier about why he didn't play more as the season started, and it was basically because they were becoming predictable. Coaches on the sideline would actually hear the other team, hey, 84's on the field, 84's on the field, and they pretty much knew what was going to happen. As he's learned the offense more and become more versed in both, the slot outside, he's able to get more work, and you're seeing it over the last 2 weeks, 20 targets. It's hard to, get too excited because of who's throwing him the football, but with the opportunity he's been getting, I agree, Austin for sure, and he's a guy that can break it at any second. You've seen that with his kick return ability, so I like him. And he's not a small guy at 6'2", 220. He's actually a bigger guy than most people think because of what you think about him with his speed and quickness. But I like him going forward. I just, with Ponder being the quarterback, it's really hard to get too excited this year.
Yeah, I'm in a lot of dynasty PPR leagues, and Cordero Patterson is one of those younger receivers that I'm trying to get, kind of buying low on him now to hold him for 2 years to see what he can be. Going back real quick, though, since we just brought up Tavon Austin, what I'm excited for with Tavon Austin is how high he's going to go next year in drafts and how much I can laugh at that guy next year for taking him so high, because these flashy plays are going to make him go really high next year because people are going to remember these games, but they're not going to remember, earlier in the season when he was only in for like 4 snaps in one game, things like that. And I think he's just way overrated right now. Maybe that changes with a full season with Sam Bradford, but I'm not getting excited about him, even in dynasty leagues. Chargers and Chiefs. Phillip Rivers kind of comes back to life in this one, 392 and 3 touchdowns, and he loves Keenan Allen, 9 catches for 124. This is another guy I'm starting to actively, try to trade for in dynasty leagues. I think redraft leagues, he's kind of hit his peak. I think people kind of know his value, but in dynasty leagues, you may be able to still buy a little low on him and go with the unpredictability factors. Say, hey, it's just 1 year. Maybe he doesn't do it again next year, that type of thing. But he's a guy that I really, really like in dynasty leagues. The Chargers running backs, though, Matt, Ryan Matthews, 14 for 55 and a touchdown before getting hurt. Danny Woodhead, 6 for 25 and a touchdown rushing, 4 for 45 and a touchdown receiving. Rest of the season, which Chargers running back would you rather have, Danny Woodhead or Ryan Matthews?
Well, Matthews is a hamstring thing, so those worry you. Those are things you can see even when they come back, re-aggravated easily, one of those type injuries. So it kind of scares me with him as well as he's been playing. I think I'm going to go Woodhead just because I'm one of those guys that, injury is such a tough question. What if he misses 3 weeks? Certainly I'd rather have those 3 weeks of Woodhead. And I'm not saying he's going to miss 3 weeks. There hasn't been anything that's saying that. Sometimes you don't know.
Let's assume for a second that he doesn't miss any time. Which one would you rather have?
Matthews. Yeah, if he's report comes out, hey, he's good to go, it was more of a cramp than anything, 100%, then I'm good with him. But
I got to tell you, I'm leaning more towards Woodhead now, to tell you the truth. Because Matthews, for me, obviously isn't involved in the passing game. We know this. So if he has a typical Ryan Matthews day, 60 to 80 yards rushing, you're not going to get anything from him receiving. And I think it's very likely that Danny Woodhead, just like in this game, between his rushing and receiving, can get you that 80 total yards. And I think Woodhead is more likely for a touchdown now.
Yeah, so I would definitely agree with the touchdown thing. Matthews is certainly not too involved in that regard.
So I think for me, it kind of pushes it a little bit more towards Woodhead. you know me. I like Ryan Matthews. I have him on a lot of my teams. It's just his lack of involvement in the passing game really kind of kills it for me. Dexter McCluster, though, and Matt, he's another guy that gets a lot of touches every way possible. 7 for 59 on 10 targets. Are you a fan of this, or do you think this is fluky? I mean, he's kind of done it a few times before this year. What do you think about Dexter McCluster?
He's a PR guy, but beyond that, the yardage is really never there. Touchdowns aren't there. Nobody I'm really looking to start. Like I said, a decent PPR guy, but
he seems like a poor man's Kendall Wright.
Yeah, but really poor. Like, I don't know.
I
like Kendall Wright quite a bit more.
Like living out of a box poor?
Yeah. And Kendall Wright has, a 2-story, 3-bedroom condo. So, big difference, I think.
Dwayne Bowe, though, here, he also scores a touchdown. His second touchdown in two straight games now. In both of them after getting caught with pot, or the other way you want to look at it, a touchdown each game after coming back from the bye. So, do you think this is something they worked on through the bye week, ways to get Bowe the ball, try to look for him in the red zone, that type of things, and now it's just starting to click? Or do you think this is totally coincidental?
I think it actually has a lot to do with the fact that obviously he's probably not smoking weed right now. So, I'm just
he could be. We don't know.
I don't know. They've been working to get him involved more often. Still 51 yards. He's very touchdown dependent, and that's not something that he's really excelled in his career.
Except for that 1 year with Castle when he had 15.
I mean, it's just, I don't know. No, I'm not excited about Bowe. Certainly, the uptick is nice, and if you've got him on your roster, you've had him all this time, you're smiling a little bit, especially if you've had to play him, but still not a guy I can trust at all. 6 targets in this game. Just don't love him.
I hate him. He's dead to me. He's totally dead to me. Bears, Rams.
Well, one guy I wanted to bring up, we talked about some dynasty earlier, the Ladarius Green from San Diego, the tight end. Right now Gates is still getting plenty of time. 2 weeks of over 80 yards, one of those basketball players. Real good athlete, young guy. I like him for dynasties. I think he's a guy that really needs to be looked at to pick up now.
Yeah, he'll be the new Gates, basically.
Yeah. And I think it could start as early as next year.
Yeah.
I mean, we're starting to see it almost a little now.
Yeah. Bears, Rams, like I said earlier, Rams, 261 yards rushing in this game. I still fully believe that Zach Stacy, had he not gotten hurt, had a very good chance of being the number 1 fantasy running back this week.
Yeah, 2 rushing touchdowns as well. I think you were right on. Well, I guess we can say 3 if you count the Tavon Austin one, but
you can't count that one.
I think that was a pretty good call, Marcus. He had 12 for 87 before the concussion. He was looking awesome. Already had scored, and Cunningham isn't the player he is. So
yeah, and Cunningham 13 for 109. So I mean, you add the two together, and what he would have got, that's the 25 carries for almost 200, or what is it, 200, almost 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. Darrell Richardson a healthy scratch in this game. So if Stacy misses time, which it's kind of iffy because with a concussion, when it's your first concussion like this, we've seen some players come back the next week. We've seen some players sit out. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. You're going to want to keep up on the practice reports to kind of see if he's practicing or not. See if he passes the concussion protocol tests. But if he does miss time, I think Benny Cunningham, obviously the guy that you want to get. Another guy we'll talk about later in the waiver wires. Did you know the Rams' most targeted receiver in this game, Chris Givens, most targeted receiver for the Rams, had 0 catches? Just thought that was interesting.
Wow.
I don't think I've ever seen a receiver be the most targeted guy on his team and still have no catches in the game. Not looking good for Chris Givens. Jared Cook, though, Matt, this was a guy that you loved in the preseason. Finally has his first game over 50 receiving yards since since his big breakout week 1. What do you think? Is he back? Is this the Jared Wright you wanted?
5 targets, terrible quarterback. No, he's not back. He's one of those.
I like when we have quick conversations, easy ones like this. No. Yeah, let's move on.
What do you
done? We're not talking about it.
How can you be excited about him when a guy like Kellen Clemens is throwing the football and based on the recent production basically over his career? So
yeah,
not excited. 5 targets. You're happy if you had to play him. Don't expect it to continue.
Bears side, all the obvious guys kind of get work in the passing game. Nice to see Martellus Bennett find the end zone again for the first time since their bye week. Earl Bennett, though, catches all 8 of his targets. I'm not buying into it. We're not talking about the other Bennett in Chicago. Panthers-Dolphins, with 3 Dolphins offensive linemen out, I fully expected to see a really poor running game, which we did see, and another great game from Rashard Matthews, because I figured it'd be a lot of short little passes trying to get it out quickly. Obviously, Matthews not really having the game I expected, but Thomas and Miller combined for just 1.2 yards per carry. As we all know, Daniel Thomas tore a ligament in his left ankle. Between the poor offensive line and the injury, it sounds like he's leaving the door open to return this year, but drop him. It's not even worth it.
Yep.
I mean, Lamar Miller at this point is honestly almost droppable. It's getting that bad. So, Daniel Thomas, go ahead and feel free to dump him. What are your thoughts, though, on Lamar Miller rest of the season? I mean, basically as the guy now. Maybe Mike Gillislee gets a little bit of work, but, I mean, he's essentially the guy now. No competition. What do you think?
Well, he's, tough matchup this week against the Jets. And I'm not too far, I'm actually not too sure of the rest of his schedule. He's been so inconsistent. At least it's nice now that the guy that's been his primary rival for touches is going to be gone. So I guess that's something that you can look forward to. Again, though, this week you hate the matchup. I'm not starting him, but it's good to see the touches. I think are obviously going to go up. Gillislee could get involved, but I think Miller's going to get the chance here.
Yeah, I'm still excited about him because that offensive line. I mean,
yeah,
Incognito's not coming back anytime soon. Martin's definitely not coming back. You're losing 2 of your offensive linemen like that. It's just been shambles since then. And Lamar Miller, I've never really seen as a great talent. Like I've never really gotten on board with him. And losing half your offensive line, that's going to kill you as well.
I think it's just the case as many times as I've said it in today's league. If he gets the touches that I'm kind of expecting him to, he's got to be a top 20 guy just because, top 20, 25 guy just because of that.
Yeah. Speaking of running backs, though, in this game, I mean, all the Panthers running backs held under 31 yards. You're not starting any of them.
No, I honestly think that they are basically all droppable.
Yeah,
they all just
eat
away at each other, and what are you going to hope for other than a touchdown? So pretty much droppable. It was a nice run with D'Angelo in the beginning of the year for you, but
and the few good games with Tolbert.
Yeah,
touchdowns with Tolbert, but yeah, it's
now there's 3 of them,
over.
and none of them are really producing. So
Jets Ravens, Matt, you had Torrey Smith as your number 1 wide receiver. How'd that work out for you?
Not very well. Looked good to start, tell you that, with a 60-something yard reception.
The 60-yard reception, yeah.
Not a whole lot after that, I guess. So I'm
just one other catch.
I loved the
14
matchup.
yards.
I thought I loved the matchup. Obviously, didn't look good. That deep bomb from Flacco to Jones should have been Smith. Damn it.
Yeah, that would have helped a lot.
4 targets. I expected a big day. Obviously.
Chris Ivory hurts his ankle in this game. When asked if it's a lower high ankle sprain, he said both. So that's obviously not a good sign. Obviously, if he's missing time, Bilal Powell's the guy you want. However, after that cake match, he has a cake matchup against the Dolphins coming up. After that, 3 tough defenses against Oakland, Carolina, and Cleveland. So if I'm a Bilal Powell owner, and if you're not, if he's still on your waiver wire, we'll talk about him later, but I'm trying to sell him now to the Chris Ivory owner on this news, that Ivory's hurt, or maybe after this week when he has a decent game, because after that, it's a shit show, and you don't want any part of it.
Yeah, if your deadline hasn't passed.
Yeah, that's true, too. By the way, Gino, he is bad. He's terrible.
Awful.
9 for 20.
And you know what else? Get rid of Folk.
You don't like Nick Folk anymore?
Cut him. No, I mean,
it's hard for them. They're not moving the ball very well.
Yeah, they're not moving the ball very well. Gino is in shambles. Plus, it's New York.
The whole Jets offense.
Yeah.
I mean,
plus it's New York. The weather is not good around here this time of year. We were here in New England. In New Hampshire, and we lost power this Sunday because of the weather. It's cold around this part, so these aren't the ideal conditions for kickers to be kicking in. I think a lot of times what you want to do come playoffs, make sure you've got a nice matchup and a guy in some good weather, even preferably a dome.
I was going to say, for me, that's always been my strategy with kickers is get guys in domes.
Yep.
Get guys in domes that are on a team that scores a lot. The Garrett Hartleys, I'm blanking on the kicker for the Lions. Akers.
Yep.
David Akers. Or my personal favorite right now, Adam Vinatieri. He gets a lot of opportunities in a dome, perfect kicking conditions. Those are the types of guys I always look for in a kicker. Other than that, they're pretty much all the same to me. Maybe the Matt Pratters of the world, just because the Broncos score so much, Gostowski, things like that.
Yeah.
But we've already spent too much time on kickers. Jaguars, Texans. The big news in this game, Ben Tate getting relieved by Dennis Johnson after being ineffective.
Boy, that sounded terrible.
Getting relieved by him.
Relieved? Was it on television, or hopefully it was like in the locker room?
I could have probably had some better choice words for that one. Texans already named Tate the starter for Week 13, but I'm nervous about it. Gary Kubiak is just crazy back there. Pulled obviously Case Keenum from the game the week before. Now he's pulling Ben Tate. He is just fighting for his job right now. Great matchup this week against the Patriots. Just really hard to trust him. He's probably, if I had to guess off the top of my head, 20th, somewhere around there. He'll end up in my rankings. It's just great matchup, decent player. I'm scared about Gary Kubiak and the usage.
Yeah, I actually had him. I think I got him at 19, and when Foster went out, he was a guy I actually really liked. I actually tried to trade for him in our home league. It's looking like it's a good thing I didn't. Kubiak's, like you mentioned,
crazy.
2 weeks in a row, he seems to be panicking. He's worried, I think, about his job. And, Ben Tate's a guy with a pretty good track record. 7 carries, you've given up on him.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to give a guy a little bit of work to get going. So I thought that was very interesting. Johnson did come in and play well, but Tate's a better player than him.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think you saw what happened. As bad as Keenum played, for some reason he didn't get benched this week.
Yeah.
It's weird. So I'm thinking maybe next week Tate's going to have himself a nice game.
It's totally erratic.
But it's hard to rank him where I think I would have if this benching didn't happen.
Absolutely. MJD, Matt, in this game, 20 touches, 144 total yards, and a touchdown. Despite his slow start that he had this year, he's right now the number 17 running back in fantasy, and since Week 6 has only averaged one less point per game than Adrian Peterson. In fact, during that time, he's actually been a top 12 back. Is MJD back to must-start territory? Top 12, that's an RB1. Like I said, one less point a game than Peterson. That's serious numbers. I think a lot of us have it stuck in our heads how bad he was the beginning part of the year and haven't looked at what he's done lately.
Yeah, I think, what is it here? Is he rounding into form, rounding into shape? I don't know. It's certainly a case of him getting a lot more involved in the passing game. 4 receptions or more in the last 4 games, 6 twice, so that helps, obviously, to go along with the carries. You love to see the touches, and MJD's not too far away from being one of the best backs in the NFL just a few years back, so it's nice what you're seeing, and I agree, yeah, he's a must-start. I had him pretty high this week, around 13, 14, I think, so certainly the highest I've had him.
Titans Raiders, Kendall Wright, Matt. I know you've talked about him a lot. You love him. Him and Justin Hunter both over 100 yards in this game. I haven't been the biggest Kendall Wright fanatic, but I'm kind of coming around to it. I always preach consistency going into the playoffs. You want a guy that's not going to cause you to lose your week when it's do or die in the playoffs. And he's basically been as consistent as you can get. 6 or more fantasy points in 6 straight games. 8 of the last 9 he's had 6 or more. In a PPR league, he's had double-digit fantasy points in every game but 2 games this year. In one of those games, he had 9 points, so he's been especially effective in PPR leagues. I think you've kind of drilled it, beating a dead horse here, but you love Kendall Wright. Tell the listeners about Kendall Wright a little bit more.
Just like you mentioned, just a very consistent guy, extremely involved in the passing game. His targets go 4, 11, 6, 8, 8, 9, 12, 5, 9, 12, 7. So very, very, very little is he just not involved. So a kid who is, very shifty. He's got some pretty good speed. He's a tough guy. He runs very well after the receptions. Obviously, the touchdowns has kind of been his crutch. He did get one this weekend, second of the year. They have a good connection, him and Fitzpatrick, and Fitzpatrick's looking like he did when he made all that money back in Buffalo for him. So
yeah, he's looked good.
Yeah, so I Kendall Wright, like you said, certainly a guy you can plug in and expect to get 6, 7 points at his worst. Yeah,
Rashad Jennings here in this game too, over 100 total yards. Dennis Allen kind of hinted to a running back by committee approach when McFadden's back. Right now Jennings has a 21-point fantasy advantage right now, lead over Darren McFadden. At the end of the season, which one do you think finishes with more fantasy points?
I think it's going to be Jennings. It's just tough to guess. Are they going to show McFadden the respect of a guy that's been here for a while? I don't know. So it's totally speculating right now. Like you said, they've already said it's going to be a running back by committee. Kind of why I said last week I don't think it's time to drop McFadden yet. I just don't know what kind of work he's gotten. He wasn't really awful, when he was playing this year. He was one of the better running backs for fantasy. Not saying much in this year, but another Marcus Rudstreeter. Another 9 targets. I know you talked about him last week. They've already said McGloin's going to play, so
we'll talk about him some more in the waiver wires. He's a guy that I am loving. Colts and Cardinals. Just when we think Donald Brown is the running back you want in Indy, he only gets 2 carries, and Trent Richardson gets 7. Neither did anything. Richardson just 15 yards rushing, Brown 1 yard. What the hell's going on back there? I mean, maybe they're trying to get T-Rich some work again just to kind of get him more involved. I don't get it. It's a fantasy mess back there with Indianapolis running backs. Coby Fleener, though, 4 for 55 and a touchdown on 8 targets. Since the Wayne injury, he's had 8 fantasy points, 5, 10, and 11, a touchdown, over 100 yards, or a 2-point conversion in every game during that span. Since week 9, since the Wayne injury, he's been the number 6 tight end in fantasy. I love Coby Fleener as if you had picked him up right around that time that Wayne went down, I actually did, and then was stupid enough to drop him a week into that run.
Yeah, the first
for
game
Tim Wright.
The first game he had wasn't a very good one with Wayne.
Well, the 8 was, still decent, but at the time I thought Tim Wright, he's doing awesome. Him and Glennon have a connection, but man, do I wish I held on to Fleener. He is looking good.
Yeah, Fleener certainly is. Luck really has not looked good since Wayne's been out.
No.
I think he was much more important to Luck than when we realized. Hilton had 9 targets this week, so I'm not too worried about the production. I still think he's a really solid play going forward. Are you worried about him at all? It was a 5 for 38 day. That happens
Hilton,
sometimes. 5 receptions. So.
I kind of am, because like you were saying, Luck just hasn't looked like Andrew Luck.
Yeah.
He doesn't have those receiving options, doesn't have those threats anymore, and just seems to be kind of looking for Coby Fleener on a little check down. He's not opening it up like he used to.
Yeah.
A lot of passes out of the backfield to Trent Richardson I've noticed over the past couple weeks. Kind of little swing passes out to him. That seems to be his thing too. Michael Floyd in this game, Matt, we've seen his targets increase from on average, about 6 through the first 10 weeks of the year to 9 over the last 2 weeks of the year. We've seen it really go up these last 2 weeks. 13 receptions, 297 yards, and a touchdown over those 2 weeks. At least 5 receptions in 6 of the last 8 games. He's right now the number 22 wide receiver in fantasy. I really feel like next year he is going to take over for Larry Fitzgerald as the number 1 guy. And I think he might even be doing it right now. These last 2 weeks he's really kind of shown what he can do. What are your thoughts on Michael Floyd?
Well, Larry's still led in targets. I still think he's the guy in town there, but Floyd is certainly nipping on his heels. There has been some talk that Larry might not be back next year, and if that's the case, then obviously Michael will take a huge jump on the boards. But regardless, even if Larry is around, you're starting to see the Julio Jones for Roddy White here. He's the guy, the young gun coming in, very talented guy. He's got all the tools. So yeah, I'm liking him. 2 weeks in a row of over 100 yards. Palmer is playing quite a bit better. No interceptions in the last 2 games. It's the first time he's done that all year. Before that stretch, he threw at least 1 pick every game this year. So
he's been terrible.
Yeah, things are looking a little better in Arizona, and Floyd is a big reason for that.
Moving on here to Cowboys and Giants. I felt like this was a very disappointing game fantasy-wise. Dez Bryant, still a stud. DeMarco Murray did pretty well, 126 total yards. But everyone else seemed really disappointing. Nix was out. Randall kind of stepped up with 64 yards receiving on 7 targets. Cruz, though, another disappointing day. 2 for 27 on 4 targets. The only shining light it seemed for the Giants was Andre Brown. What do you think this is going to be like next year? Do you think, this year, coming into this year, it was David Wilson, 3rd, 4th round guy, and then Andre Brown, 7th, 8th round type guy. do you think we're going to see a lot of the same thing next year, or do you think they're going to flip-flop or be closer and both be in that 5th round range? What do you think is going to happen with both of their values next year?
I think Andre's going to be the first, second down back, and Wilson's going to be the third.
Well, right, but I mean, draft-wise, where do you think they're going to go in fantasy drafts?
I'd say Andre will be a 4th round pick or so.
Where's Wilson?
3rd round pick, maybe.
Where do you think Wilson goes?
Wilson will be 6, 7, 8, right around there.
You think that
maybe,
long?
Maybe, yeah, 7, 8, I think. I mean, what's your upside to take him as well as Brown's been playing and the injury concerns plus the fumble concerns? You know, Brown isn't an old guy. It's not like they're going to try to move him out of town. So
actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it's kind of reminding me of 2 years ago, C.J. Spiller, Fred Jackson. You know, C.J. Spiller was the high draft pick, but you could still get him several. You know, he was going 6th, 7th, 8th round because those first couple of years he really wasn't producing. And then obviously has turned it on recently, I'm going to say. Not so much this year, but, I mean, kind of reminds me of that scenario a little bit from a couple of years ago. Miles Austin and Terrence Williams in this game combined for 2 catches, 27 yards on 5 targets. I'm done with both of them. How about you?
Yeah, 16 targets to Romo. Somebody was locking in, I would say. I mean, to Bryant. I'd say somebody was locking in a little bit.
Yeah, those two are just Miles Austin.
I'm not done with Terrence Williams, but he certainly has kind of fallen off the cliff. I still had him, I think, top 30, 35 this week.
Wow. I'm not going to have him that high, that's for sure. Broncos-Patriots, what a game. Another great comeback here by Tom Brady. But, Matt, after fumbles by Ridley in 2 straight games, and Blount having a fumble in this game, Vereen and Brandon Bolden take over. Vereen now, 8 receptions in each of his first 2 games back. I feel like the dude is a PPR beast rest of this season and probably next year, it's going to continue. If you had to pick one lead back for the Patriots that you wanted to own right now between Ridley and Vereen, which one do you want?
Vereen, for sure.
It's definitely, I was going to say, for me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Easy. But I didn't think that would be a no-brainer for a lot of people out there, but apparently it is for you.
Yeah, easily. There were 11 fumbles in this game, just so you know, and the thing is, with that, I guess maybe you can look at Ridley's fumble and cut him a little slack. Everybody was having trouble holding the football. I mean, one of the plays, Manning was just in a drop back, nobody near him, and slightly tapped it with his offhand and fumbled there. So it was extremely slippery, obviously, extremely cold. Wind chills were, my guess, down to the, single digits, easy.
Oh, easy.
And possibly even into the negatives. I know it was about 4 that morning, so, it was tough conditions. So I'm not sure that, I know Bolden is the big guy to pick up this week. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if anybody really does. Coach could look at it.
I don't think Bolden's going to be really a part of the game plan. I think that just happened as kind of a disciplinary thing. Hey, you guys fumbled. We're going to bench you guys. Okay, let's go with that for a second. If Bolden's going to have carries, who doesn't get the carries? You're telling me that
Ridley
just...
So is he finally sick and tired of it? Who knows? Is he going to look at it where 11 fumbles happen and it happened to be one of them?
Nah.
Could be. So I don't really want to own any of them. That's why I say Vereen. I think his role is set in stone.
I'd like to see Vereen get more carries. I mean, a lot of people forget, but Vereen was drafted ahead of Ridley and was going to be the starter if it wasn't for those injuries that first couple, that second year in after Ben Jarvis Green Ellis left. People don't realize he was going to be the starter, but injuries held him back from being in there, and that's when Ridley kind of took over and ran.
I mean, I don't know if he was. You don't know if he was going to be the starter for sure. I don't know if they've ever seen him as their every down back.
I'm pretty sure, from what I remember, living up here in New England, that's what they obviously gearing towards. That's what they seem to want to do. But, I'd like to see him get more carries. I feel he's earned it. He's been great. He's been explosive.
He's holding on to the football.
He's holding on to the football. Something you kind of have to do in a Bill Belichick offense. But the other running back in this game has a monster day. No Sean Moreno. I think 227 yards rushing. Suffers a bruised ankle in this game. Is considered day-to-day. I think for me, Monty Ball is the handcuff here. The clear-cut handcuff. I know we've talked about C.J. Anderson in the past, but for me, I totally think it's Ball. I still can't believe they ran the ball with him 37 times, knowing Moreno's injury history. Matt, you're obviously a Moreno owner. What's your game plan for this?
I hated to see 37 carries. Now, don't get me wrong. If it was week 15, 16, we're in the playoffs all day, give it to me. But 37 is scary, like you mentioned. He hasn't been the healthiest player in his career. He left this game in a walking boot on crutches. More of a preventative thing. Of course, a lot of times they'll do that just to keep it as immobile as possible with as much healing time. It was nice to see 37 carries because obviously they trust him and only him in this offense. But a little bit much for me. Too much of a pounding. You pretty much fully expect the guy to come out on crutches after 37 carries in the NFL. This isn't two-hand touch.
Yeah.
I disagree with you, by the way, on the clear-cut handcuff. I would say it would be a 50-50 split if Moreno were to go down. Ball fumbled again in this game, second time in 2 weeks. He didn't see the field again. C.J. Anderson finished off this game, so that is something that opened my eyes. You take him off the field because of the fumble, and C.J. gets the rest of the work. Not that he got a lot. Basically they just said, all right, Moreno, you're going to have to take this game home because they're not trusting the rookie. Like I said, 2 games in a row with a fumble. I think it's a 50-50 split between C.J., Ball, and maybe Hillman would get back involved. So,
all right. I still think it's Ball for me, but 49ers, Redskins.
Hey, Eric Decker, Marcus, guy you have been loving earlier in the year.
He's been terrible. He's been terrible.
Right. You liked him 3-4 weeks ago. You were very
excited. It was longer than that.
Was it?
Beginning of the season. 4 or 5 weeks into the season, that type of thing. But he has fallen off a cliff for me. I am really, really nervous for him.
Yeah.
1 catch for 5 yards here, 4 targets.
One thing I think he
averaging 42 yards a game the last 4 games, no touchdowns.
He goes as Peyton goes, right?
Yeah, Manning's kind of dropped off a little bit.
And a lot of it was, the matchup with Kansas City. This weather was unbearable. If you watched the game, you saw how cold everybody was. So I don't know if I'm falling off a cliff with him.
So maybe I'm overreacting a little bit too much the other way now.
He's still a top 20 guy for me.
49ers and Redskins, though. Colin Kaepernick finally, gets his act together here. 235 and 3 touchdowns. Him and Bolden finally seem to have that connection again. He's always had that connection with Vernon Davis. And then now Michael Crabtree obviously getting reactivated today, and it's sounding like there's a high possibility he plays in Week 13. What do you think this does for both Kaepernick's value, because obviously it helps him tremendously having Michael Crabtree back, but how do you also think this affects Anquan Bolden's value now that he's going to have another similar player in the offense playing a similar role?
Yeah, I don't think Bolden's value will hurt too much. Crabtree's going to demand some respect out there. As long as he comes back and he looks good. If he comes back and he's obviously not himself, the other guys on defense will see that, and things can kind of change. But if he comes back and he's the Crabtree of old, certainly that's going to demand respect. It's going to give Bolden a little more room to roam out there. And hey, let's not forget Manningham's back. I talked about him a couple of weeks ago. 7 targets.
A lot of targets.
Yeah, he looked good. So Kaepernick has certainly, this week especially, if Crabtree plays, his weapons are extremely better than they were a few weeks ago. A guy I kind of liked down the stretch.
I would say it's another thing, too. I think they're kind of slowing down Frank Gore a little bit to preserve him a little bit for their playoff run and for the playoffs. So I think this is something where we could see Kaepernick kind of throwing the ball a little bit more, utilizing those weapons, those new weapons in Manningham and getting Crabtree back and such. And like I said, he's always had that connection with Vernon Davis this year. Getting this back going with Bolden, this could be very, very interesting, moving forward with Colin Kaepernick. He could jump back into that must-start quarterback 1 territory again. A guy that's not in my must-start necessarily, but a guy that's obviously right up there, RG3, another, a bad game here. Just 127 yards passing. Where do you think he goes next year in fantasy drafts? I think
he's a tough call because... Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, you say there's probably like that one guy out there that loves RG3 unrelentlessly and drafts him high anyway.
Yeah, and I still have a belief, too, that maybe he's just not... you can't expect everybody to do what Adrian Peterson did. Maybe he's not quite 100%. Maybe he's 90%. You're not going to see much better than that this year. Next year he's back to full strength. He can't regress this much just because. I think the injury has a lot to do with it. I think he needs a little bit more weapons around him. But But I mean, I'm not excited about him for next year. He won't be any earlier than an 8th round, 9th round pick like he was this year for me.
He's going to be back down there again. For me, I know it's a different situation because Matthew Stafford early in his career was injury riddled, but I think it reminds me a lot of Stafford where he has talent and you're going to see him probably slip to that 10th, 11th, 12th round range, but can perform like a top 5 quarterback. You could draft him that low and get a top 5 quarterback out of him potentially. It could happen. We have seen it before. I'm not saying we're going to see it again next year, but it could happen. You could get great value there. But I'm right there with you, Matt. I'm not taking him anywhere before rounds 8 or 9.
Yeah, who was the defensive player drawing a brain cramp coming out saying he should not be playing? He's a man. He's got the heart of a warrior, but he shouldn't be playing. We can all see it. He's not 100%. Did you see that?
I did see it. I forgot the name of the player, though.
I mean, that's interesting coming from an opposing player, showing respect, but being honest, so.
Excuse me. So, jumping into the Thursday day, the Thanksgiving Day games, all 3 of them here, Packers and Lions, I think this is going to be a shootout of a game. I hope it is. I like seeing shootouts. Nobody, let's be honest, nobody likes seeing defensive, games. I mean, they're not exciting. But, as much of a shootout as we can have here with Matt Flynn, can make, but the Packers and Lions defenses, 11th and 12th respectively against opposing quarterbacks and allowing the most fantasy points. In 3 games with Tolzien and Flynn, Jarrett Boykin, 19 receptions, 263 yards and a touchdown. I think he's going to be just fine, but Matt, which Packers wide receiver are you ranking the highest this week?
I'm still going to have Jordy Nelson the highest. His history there with him and Flynn will be starting certainly this game. Pretty much expecting Rodgers to not play. He hasn't even practiced yet, so I'm going to say Jordy Nelson for me. And then I'm not sure about James Jones and Boykin. I had him very close because I wasn't sure in the rankings.
I still have Boykin number 1 for me.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just, I don't know why, but he's been getting it done consistently. He's looked good. I mean, he has that connection with Tolzien, Matt Flynn. He seems to be getting it done. I mean, I don't know. I don't. Jordy has looked good, but I don't know. For some reason, I feel like they're there. One side of the ball, I mean, you're obviously starting everybody. You're starting Stafford, Bush, Megatron, all those guys. But Nate Burleson, does he push his way into must-start territory now?
He's getting there, huh? I mean, he's so involved, like you said.
One game, and we're already like, he's getting there.
Well, I mean, yeah. The thing is, sure, it's 1 game, but it's almost like he never missed any games. The way he came back and played, he picked up right where he left off. You've got a superstar, supreme talent next to you and Megatron, and obviously it lets you roam a little free out there. He's not a guy that you're going to look to stop when a guy like Megatron's out there. So, yeah, you got to like him. Stafford loves to throw the football. I mean, the Lions love to throw the football. He's going to throw it up there 40 times, 45 times. So,
and he's definitely their wide receiver, too, again. Chris Durham getting pushed back there.
Yeah, so I like him, absolutely.
Raiders and Cowboys, sounds like this is going to be the return of Darren McFadden in this one. I would only consider playing Rashad Jennings in this one. I'm staying away from Darren McFadden because I think they're going to ease him back in. And I think the way Rashad Jennings has been playing, he's still going to get a lot of work. But what about you, Matt? If you had Darren McFadden, would you be starting him? Would you feel comfortable starting him this week?
Oh, absolutely not. I have Rashad Jennings quite a bit higher than him. It's not even close for this week. And it's more just because I just want to see what it's going to be like. As well as Rashad's been playing, it's hard to think that they're going to just forget about him. So I think Darren gets the least amount of work this week out of those two, and then maybe next week we'll revisit it. But I think for sure Rashad's a better play and a decent play because of who they're playing.
Now, given Oakland's strong run defense and Dallas's propensity in the second half to kind of abandon the run, where do you have DeMarco Murray this week? I want to say I want to put him outside my top 20, but I also feel like I'm saying I'm putting so many people outside my top 20 that
you gotta have somebody.
It's got to be somebody in there. So it's kind of like, all right, well, what's going on? But DeMarco Murray, he's a guy that I think is going to be outside my top 20 because it's a tough matchup and they just don't seem to utilize him in the second half. But I mean, I guess we'll see when I get my rankings together a little bit later tonight.
Yeah, when we're talking running backs, 20 is the new 30 for me, so it's pretty easy to make your top 20.
Yeah.
I think I do have him there, but it's close to 20.
Romo and company should be able to throw all over the Raiders' defense here. They're allowing the 9th most fantasy points to quarterbacks and the 4th most to wide receivers, so we could see a really nice game from Des Bryant as well. Steelers and Ravens. Remember how the first half of the year we were talking about the Steelers as having a very good, strong secondary and kind of shutting down people?
Yeah.
Well, in 3 of the last 4 games, they've allowed at least 240 passing yards to opposing wide receivers. Just wide receivers, 240 yards. That is a ton. And they've given up 6 touchdowns in those particular 3 games where they've been allowing all these yards. So it seems like wide receivers have been actually doing pretty well against the Steelers recently. This even includes a matchup, obviously last week, where the Browns hung up 21 receptions from their wide receivers for 281 yards and a touchdown. I mean, when the Browns are putting up those kind of numbers, I get it.
Why even say Browns? It was
I know, Josh Gordon. I mean, I get it. But you know what I'm saying? Like, 21 receptions to your wide receivers, that is a ton of receptions to wide receivers. And obviously when Brandon Whedon's able to put up numbers like that on you, it's not looking good.
Yeah, I like the call.
When you have, guys like Flacco coming in there. Not that Flacco's a great talent by any means, but better than Brandon Whedon. Pretty good matchup here for Le'Veon Bell. I still hate him. I hate that yards per carry. You're never going to make me a believer in this, even in a good matchup. Another guy I'd like to say outside my top 20, but I just run out of guys here. Waiver wire pickups this week, Matt. Let's run over some names here real quick. Benny Cunningham, I think we talked about it earlier. If Zach Stacy misses any time, I think he's your number one waiver claim if you're a Zach Stacy owner, because you need to kind of shore up that Rams running back spot. Starting caliber running backs don't come around very often on the waiver wire, so if you're a Stacy owner, you need to go out and nab him. Bilal Powell, for me, I've kind of said it, just kind of a guy for me. Great matchup this week, but after that, it's a lot of bad matchups, and it's still just the Jets' offense. Nate Burleson, we've talked about him. We both love him.
Yeah, and I think with Bilal, Marcus, it'll be something where you're going to be a nice fill-in for you this week
for this
matchup,
week, yeah.
But Ivory's going to get that job back. He was playing too well to not.
Yeah.
Till his next injury.
Yeah, but like I said, too, Burleson here, over 6 receptions a game. We love him.
Love him, yep.
And then Rod Streeter, a guy that you started to bring up earlier.
Yep.
I talked about him 2 weeks ago when McGloin first came in. 6 for 84 and a touchdown in Week 11. 5 for 93 in Week 12. Him and Matt McGloin have got it going on. McGloin, obviously the starter again this week. So Rod Streeter, I think, nice pickup if you picked him up. I think in those daily fantasy sport leagues, the FanDuels, the Draft Streets, Streeter is going to be another guy that you're going to want to play because you'll get him at a relatively cheap value and produced very well. And then finally, one last receiver. If he's somehow still on the waiver wire, Michael Crabtree. I mean, he's back, guys. He's back for this game. I'm not expecting much out of him. I'm thinking it's going to be like a Percy Harvin type day where he plays 30% of the snaps, maybe has a catch or two, that type of thing. But if he's still out there, he's got to be the number one waiver claim for you, right, Matt?
Yeah, I would say so because of the upside. And another guy I want to add to the list is Cordarrelle Patterson. He's still probably out there in a lot of leagues. So,
yeah.
Like to see the 20 targets over the last 2 weeks for a talent like him.
Yeah.
But Crabtree, I agree. Highest upside of all of them. Yeah, he's number one.
Number one.
Mr. Son of a Beach, let's play some cards.
All in, bluffing, calling, or folding him. Trent Richardson.
Calling or folding.
Rob Gronkowski. I am all in on Jamal Charles.
He was just compared to Barry Sanders.
All right, Matt, so let's go into the all-in segment where you like to kind of tell listeners, give the little poker analogy if you're all in on the guy, calling, folding, bluffing with him. So I'm going to give you some hints to some people, and we'll see if you can name them. You've actually been pretty good at this lately. So
Not really. The last few weeks have been terrible.
Well, we'll see if you can turn it around here. So this quarterback is 6th in the NFL in completions, completion percentage, and passing yards. 7th in touchdown passes. 10th in fantasy scoring. But he's been sacked the second most in the league. He's also thrown a touchdown, though, in every game this year. Who is he? So he's putting up top 10 numbers pretty much across the board in every category you could imagine. And has thrown a touchdown in every game.
Ben Roethlisberger?
It is Ben Roethlisberger.
All right.
So what do you think of him? Buying, calling, Folding. What are you doing?
This time of year, I'd really love to see the schedule because that does play a big part for me. Playoff matchups can really make or break your playoff. So tough for me to say because I don't know that, but I love Antonio Brown. The guy is, I'm ready to say elite. When we're talking fantasy wide receivers this year, he's been awesome. Oof. Can you disagree with me there though? Really, he has been great.
Elite? No.
So I'm going to say. Maybe, you know what I'm going to do? I'm hoping to sell high on Roethlisberger. The weather's not going to be good for him come playoff time, of course. Tough conditions. See if you can make a trade. Get rid of him if you got him. Not a lot of value in quarterback, so
I don't think
decent guy to have as your backup. Not bad if you have a guy like him to back up your starter come playoff time. You don't want to be stuck with an injury happening and then nothing. So
yeah, I don't think there's a big trade value for Ben. There's not a lot of people out there looking for Ben Roethlisberger. But
yeah, especially with no recent injuries and things like that. I agree with you.
All right, so running back here. As a running back, I have more receiving yards than rushing yards. In fact, I have more receptions than carries this year. Kind of amazing when you realize that I lead the NFL in yards per carry out of all players that have played at least 25% of their team's snaps. Who am I?
Is it Danny Woodhead?
It is not Danny Woodhead.
Oh. Okay.
Sounds like Danny Woodhead, but it's not. You're going to be very surprised at this name, I think. I don't think you're going to get this one. I'll give you one more guess. AFC.
I don't know.
Chris Ogbonnaya.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Chris Ogbonnaya leading the NFL in yards per carry out of running backs that have played at least 25% of their team snaps.
Yeah, very limited carries, though. So
yeah, so what do you think? Are you all in, calling, folding, or bluffing with Chris Ogbonnaya, basically the new starter for the Cleveland Browns at running back?
Yeah, he fumbled this weekend and
Fozzie Whitaker
was basically benched after that.
Yeah,
so
came in.
That kind of scared me. I still ranked him pretty high this week. I'm all in because you can have him. You can get him for I assume next to nothing, and as long as this fumble benching was a one-time thing, I haven't minded what I've seen from him, and he's involved. He's one of those guys that can stay on the field for all three downs. He's very good out of the backfield. So yeah, I'm all in because of what you can get him for. A guy I'd like to have on my bench come playoffs.
Yeah. All right, so for the wide receiver here, I've had at least 5 receptions in every game this year. I'm currently the number 4 wide receiver in standard scoring, number 3 in PPR. In PPR, I've scored at least 11 fantasy points in every game this year, and I lead the NFL in receptions and am second in yards. Who am I? And are you all in, calling, or folding?
Number 1, number 2 is it Brandon Marshall?
It's Antonio Brown. Your boy.
Oh yeah,
your boy Antonio Brown.
Well, Jesus, do I have to tell you that after I confess my love for him when I talked about Ben?
No, you don't have to, but I'm sure you're going to want to.
Love him. I absolutely love him. Extremely consistent. It's about as consistent as it gets. And yeah, number 4. And you still don't agree with me that he's elite this year for fantasy wide receiver.
So tough to say elite when he doesn't get the touchdowns. I
mean,
I know
he has been this year. What do you mean?
He has been recently.
It's been awesome.
6, I think, on the year. But that's I don't know.
Certainly not the norm for him throughout his career. I agree with you, but
no. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. Me at Marcus Katkin, Matt at Matt Dugal. Make sure to keep sending your questions to #BlindsidePod or emailing us blindside@blindsidefootball.com. Matt, Rob, and I, as you guys know, every Sunday from noon until kickoff, answering your start-sit questions at #AskBlindside. Not going to go over any questions this week just because I know we're going to run a little long going over all these games, recapping all the Week 12 games and previewing the 3 Thursday games. So we're going to kind of skip the questions, but keep them coming to us, guys. We'll make sure we'll try to get them on in future podcasts. And then finally, if you think you got what it takes to be a fantasy football blogger for us, make sure you email us at career@blindsidefootball.com. Send a couple of writing samples, and let's get you on our team. Matt, you got anything else before eating some turkey and watching some games on Thursday?
No, just wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Hope you have a good time. How can you not with all the football that's going to be on and all the food you're going to be able to eat?
Yeah, have fun on Thursday, guys, and be safe out there.
See you.
Yo, Check it, it's my time. I'm rapping about Blindside, fantasy football podcast in this rhyme because they got me the inside scoop on Adrian Peterson. Yeah, he's that dude on Cam Newton. Yeah, they give me the news more on Megatron, Calvin Johnson if I stay tuned. On all quarterbacks, RG3 happens to be the fastest QB in the league. In fact, Colin Kaepernick is rider QB for them 49ers. It ain't hard to see, Some awesome people hosting Marcus Katkin and Matt Dugal. You should be joining. Skinny or fat, short or tall, anyone can tune in to Blindside Football. Have a try, dude. Listen on iTunes or blindsidefootball.com too,